business, we're going to do a roll call. But before we do the roll call, just a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, the meeting is an open meeting and it is being streamed right now so that anybody and everybody that wants to view the meeting and the businesses at hand will have the ability to do that. Having said that, if you put something in the chat box, there is a high probability that that will show on the screen. So you can use the chat box, but just be aware that whatever you put in the chat box most likely will be visible to anybody that is viewing the meeting. So, Colin, if you want to do roll call.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want everyone just to go through and?
Why don't you go through and call their name out?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously.
Chris Hensley here.
John Hendrickson.
Present.
Richard Lowry.
Present.
Daniel Bonavec.
Present.
Ian Maranovich. Ivan, sorry.
Ivan, you're here.
Well, he's here, but...
Ivan, why don't you say you're present?
Thank you.
We can't hear him.
You're on mute.
Yeah,
he's not on mute, but we can't hear him. But he did say, "I lip read present." So
okay. Let's see here. Joshua Katz.
Present.
Mark Bauerlein.
Present.
Liz Mathis.
Present.
Mike Whalen.
Present.
Wilford McClay.
Present.
Let's see here. The names are moving all around on me. Let's see. John Hendrickson. Did I already call it?
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry. My list is floating all over the place. I'm sorry. Jim Lindenmeyer.
Here.
And Peter Mathis.
Here.
And then Liz Mathis.
Yep, she's here.
And I think I've covered everyone.
Well, and me.
Greg
Gansky's
coming.
Harold Uhlig is also here.
I'm sorry.
Also
Uhlig, U-H-L-A-G. I'm listed. You just didn't call out my name. That's okay.
Okay.
Greg Gansky just joined.
Greg Gansky just joined. Excellent, Greg. And what about Steve Lacey? Steve Lacey's in the waiting room, Colin. I just got a text from him.
I'm Chris. I think I'm in now. This is Steve.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah.
There is also.
Thank you, Chris.
There is also someone. It's I don't see Norm's iPad.
I'm sorry. What was that, Luciano?
There is someone that is named in Norm's iPad. I don't know.
It should be Norm Johnson. Is it Norm Johnson?
Oh.
He's going to be, his name is going to be submitted to the Board of Regents for appointment to the Advisory Council. So he's listening.
But he is not a member of the Advisory Council yet, right?
That is correct. Yeah. Okay. So we've got a quorum established. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Everybody should have received the agenda with all the attachments. Can I have a motion, please?
I motion to accept.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Let's just do hand signs.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Excellent. Agenda approved. Next item on the agenda are the minutes of our November 18th meeting. You should have received a copy of those as well. Any changes, additions, deletions? Hearing none, can I have a motion for approval of the November 18th minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. And
I'll
who was the
second.
second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, this is an update on the Advisory Council membership update. At the Executive Committee, I did discuss that Ambassador Branstad is not able to serve on the Executive Committee. His health is really, he's had to limit his activities. So in his place, I had asked former Congressman Greg Gansky if he would step into the Executive Committee role. That was approved at the Advisory Council level, and so we will move forward with that. And then, as I was stating as we started the meeting, we actually, Kurt Jaden, who is another regent, when Robert Kramer came in as chair of the board back in February, there was a realignment of activities assigned to regents, and Kurt has taken on a pretty significant role within the regent's office, working on an efficiency study with all the universities. Since he is not going to be on the Advisory Council, we've reached out to Norm Johnson. Norm is a retired CEO of ClarCorp, which is a New York Stock Exchange company. He's an alumni of the University of Iowa. He's a significant donor to the University of Iowa. And Norm was also one of the people that I had a very early conversation with regarding setting up a civics center. So he is very, very supportive. I will get to you, Colin, so you can share his full bio with the committee. This has all just happened over the weekend, so I'll get that and we can make that available. But his appointment to the Advisory Council will have to be approved by the Board of Regents. So, and that will happen at the June 15th and 16th meeting next week that will be in Iowa City. So, update on the Advisory Council members. So any other, on the faculty side, Richard, I think everybody's good.
No, I haven't heard anyone needing to step off or anything, so I think we're stable there.
Good, excellent, excellent. Okay, moving on then. Next item on the agenda, we have board and legislative update, really the legislative update. And what a whirlwind of activity with this legislative session. What I'd like to first talk a little bit about would be the legislation that was passed and why it is really so significant. I'm sure everybody is aware of the legislation that was passed, House File 2800, which passed at the very end of the legislative session. It was part of the standings bill. And we, the Regent office and regents had been working directly with Representative Taylor Collins to establish a bill that would require the core curriculum. And we had also had discussions with him that if it was not successful at the legislature, that we would develop policies. The regents would develop policies and make it a requirement. Well, we were moving forward anticipating that it probably wasn't going to happen at the legislative session. And so our executive director and Taylor had a number of conversations regarding the policies that would be implemented. And to our surprise, in the 11th hour in the marathon session, House File 2800 was passed as part of the standings bill. And that you should have all received a copy of the legislation that was passed. Under the Iowa law, it gives the governor 30 days to sign the bills. And that date, the final date that she could sign the bill was last Tuesday, June 2nd. And as a result of that, That's why we wanted to have this meeting as quickly as possible. During the time that we had, once the bill passed or had passed the legislature and before it was signed, just to give you an idea of the activities and what transpired, the regents, Robert Kramer and myself for sure, and occasionally another regent participated. We actually had a meeting with President Wilson to discuss the impact of the bill and how we are planning to move forward. And the significant change as a result of the bill passing was that we would immediately begin the search for a permanent director. We had talked about interim directors, but we immediately came to the conclusion that we would start the search for the permanent director. The significance of the bill, in addition to the core curriculum and the 6 hours that students will be required to take, is that we have 2 years. It's not effective until July of 28. So that really gives us ample time. And that was the thinking as we talked about hiring the executive director, the permanent director, that the permanent director would be able to come in and be involved in helping develop the core curriculum. But in the meantime, in addition to meeting with President Wilson, we called a meeting of the provosts from the 3 state universities. And they came to Des Moines to the region office. We had the academic affairs officer, Rachel Boone, participated, as well as Taylor Collins participated. And I would say it was an excellent discussion, as we had one-on-one conversations with both the president of the university and the provost from time to time. There was a lot of discussion as to why this just was not going to work. But so Representative Taylor Collins credit, and he worked with us, and we engaged with ACTA, which is the American Council of Trustees and Alumni. They were extremely helpful to us in helping us sort through and giving us information as to what had occurred in other civic centers that had gone through the same process. So as a result of the information that they presented to us, it became obvious, I would say, in that meeting to the provost, as well as to the governor, because that same information was provided to her, that this was something that was very doable, and she was pleased to be able to move forward and sign the bill. So, and Colin saying everybody's been admitted, so excellent. So I am going to stop right there and see if there are questions, comments, anybody would like to add at this point. And I see Liz has her finger up, and so does Richard.
Chris, what can you tell us about the Common Sense Institute review? The report that they gave, was Representative Collins informed by that report? What precipitated him to do this and put this into language in terms of a law?
I'll answer that, and we'll go into more detail on the market assessment that was done by Common Sense. But yes, Representative Collins had seen the report. It had been presented at the Capitol, so he had seen that, and it clearly indicated that there was that this was very beneficial for the center, and he has strongly felt this from the very beginning, that the core curriculum needed to be a part of the center. And it was just a matter of trying to work through and figure out how best to accomplish that.
I guess I'm just questioning, if we are to be a center for intellectual freedom, why it is mandatory. Why did he put this law together? And it's almost a mandate that the students, I mean, it's mandatory that the students have to take this class, but yet we are talking about intellectual freedom. I feels a little disjointed to me. That's all.
I understand. The feeling on the civics core curriculum is that, number one, there has really been a lack of that within the university courses. If you look at the general electives and what they can take, they're really pretty. There's some that are really suspect as to why they would even be courses. But there's also a report out there that will underscore the lack of knowledge that students have as a regard to the history of the United States and American freedom. So it's just a feel. It needs to be emphasized that the civic courses are an important part of our culture and our history, and just ensuring that individuals have that knowledge. And we are going to talk about the market assessment down further in the agenda list. Richard, you had your hand up.
Yeah, this wasn't, I just wanted to respond to Liz briefly before I say what I was really like. I do think it's very important to separate, like, there are curriculum requirements. Someone sets the curriculum requirements. There's no sense in which curriculum requirements being one thing versus the other infringe the sort of concept of intellectual freedom. The idea of intellectual freedom is you don't prejudge, intellectual results. Like if you want to propose that we eliminate all requirements at the University of Iowa because the student should be free to pick everything else, that's very different than sort of the intellectual freedom that we have in mind with this center. But that's just a quick response. But the main thing I want to say is we've had two people who came in late. I don't know if we need to like formally roll call them in or anything. I just want to flag that.
Colin, who were they? Can you give us?
Yes, absolutely. So Sergio Kleinerman joined in, and Dorian Abbott joined in. Greg Gansky joined in.
Okay.
I just didn't know if that needed to be
Entered into the record. Yeah.
Reynolds Kramer also joined in.
So yeah, that was all.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Did I miss? Are there any other questions?
I just want to add a comment. I'm going to go over more details about the CSI report later because it's in the agenda. But I just want to clarify that the report came out at the end of April, and the Representative Taylor Collins submitted his bill, and it has been discussed in the legislation from January. So it was way before the report. But I'll go into more details about the report later.
Okay. The next item on the under the legislative update, there was an additional appropriations made for this year for $1 million. So we have the leftover from this year, which last I heard was in that $350,000 range, with the new appropriation being effective July 1 of 26. So that is very, very positive. And then the other thing that I would just indicate is as we look at the core curriculum and that coming through the center, that will be a significant, we talked about it being a game changer, but that will be really significant from a revenue perspective for the center as well. So that'll have to be a process that we'll have to work through the university with. So moving on then, next item on the agenda was to talk about the vision from the Board of Regents perspective. And, let me start out by just indicating that the legislation that was passed already lays out by law that the center will play a critical role in the development of the core curriculum and implementing the core curriculum. And as I was looking at this and working with various Regent members as well as the Regent office, at the top of the list, the vision for the center, I want to have in bold letters, success. I am a person that has a can-do attitude, so there is no question in my mind that everything that we do at the center will be to ensure it is successful. And as you look at some of the short-term, long-term goals, let me just break that down as to how I see it. At the top of the list right now is hiring that permanent director, and Richard's going to go through that next on the agenda. That is going to be extremely important. And again, we have 2 years in order to develop the core curriculum and implement it. And that is the reason that we are going forward quickly to hire the permanent director. Another item, short-term wise, would be establishing a positive partnership with the university. I know we don't want the center to be subordinate to the university. However, it's going to be more critical than ever that we have a strong, good relationship with the university. And there's going to have to be a lot of work with the various individuals at the university. So, Peter, I know you're on the call. We'll look to you to really help us ensure that that occurs. Then next item on my short-term list would be having a very, very successful fall speaker series. I know there's been quite a bit in the press about the low attendance and enrollment at the spring courses. However, I think those numbers are really understated, because I know in talking with some of the instructors for those courses that they had quite a few people that participated in those courses. So as we're looking at hiring a permanent executive director, and we're developing the core curriculum, everything else will be on pause with the exception of developing the speaker series. And we just feel that that's the most appropriate direction at this particular time. The other thing that I would just like to ask that the advisory group consider as soon as we have a permanent executive director, that we work with a group like ACTA or some independent third party that could come in and work with us on developing a strategic plan. And I think that would be extremely helpful to us as we're navigating all these waters. Long-term wise, from a Regents perspective, we really want to see the Center for Intellectual Freedom become a premier civic education center within the country. I think maybe we've started off, we got a lot accomplished in the first 9 months to a year. Looking back, hindsight, you can always say maybe we should have done something differently here or there. But considering the amount that we did get accomplished and learning from what other centers have dealt with and talking to their executive directors, I think we really did get quite a lot accomplished. Then hiring outstanding faculty, tenured eligible faculty on a long-term basis. You're looking at, you've got, right now we have Luciano and you have Colin. If you have the core curriculum courses going through the center, you're looking at, potentially 6,000 students. And that's going to require a significant amount of faculty that be hired, and the faculty are going to have to be hired before the courses start in the fall of 28. So there's just a lot of work ahead that's going to need to be done, and it's going to be a need for a lot of support and assistance from the advisory council to ensure that this is successful. I will add also that when we had the meeting with the provost, that Taylor Collins made it very clear to us that there might need to be some tweaks to the law, and that he is already looking at what some of those tweaks might need to be. And one of them at the discussion has already occurred. Does the center become a separate college, and what would be the process, and how would we go about that? So there will continue to be significant discussions, and at the appropriate time, the advisory council obviously will need to get involved in that. So I'm going to stop there. Comments, questions? Liz?
I'm sorry. Doing this again.
Richard had his hand raised.
Who else did?
Richard.
Did.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on the. I mean, I know I'm next on the agenda, but since I wanted to talk about something else, I I think it's very important, we've got 2 years and change to get a massive set of a small set of classes that will be delivered to a massive number of people. I think we need to start working on this now. I think one thing that we have that maybe some of the other centers that have is we have a very solid group of academics on this board. And in particular, I think we should probably, as soon as possible, start getting, meetings together and ideas and sort of start developing outlines of curricula for this, because that's going to inform, hiring. Because hiring, I don't know. I mean, the academic hiring cycle is very specific, and we're going to need to be starting to scale up very fast to get the hiring in. I do note, one of our members, Professor McClay, has fairly recently written a book that is basically the survey of American history. And so I was thinking that, if Professor McClay was willing to sort of take the lead on, organizing something around like, have the scholars sort of start sketching out their ideas. Obviously, the current interim director and then the permanent director will obviously be very involved in this, but I think we might be just go ahead and get started. We have some really amazing expertise here, and I think maybe we can sort of arrange, and I'm happy to organize the scholars to discuss this. I don't think I should be taking the lead on designing a history class, but
Let me ask this. I don't disagree with that, Richard. My question would be, if the permanent director that's hired comes on board and is not wanting to go that direction, and I'm not saying what that would be, I don't know, but is that just a waste of their time, or how do we blend that?
I wouldn't think so, because whoever the advisory board is a statutorily mandated entity, right? So one way or the other, whatever the permanent director is going to want to do, he's going to need to get advice from the advisory board. So we might as well go ahead and be prepared with the advice. And I think, unless we go in a very strange direction with the director in a way that I would think would be wildly inappropriate, any permanent director is going to be interested in what Professor McClay, for example, has to say. So I don't think it would be a waste of time. I think it would be good, especially with the clock ticking, it would be good to go ahead and get, our thoughts on that. I shouldn't speak for Professor McClay, but that was just my thinking of what might be a good way to sort of get things moving.
Have you had a conversation with Professor McClay? Is he willing to do that?
Briefly, very shortly before the meeting, I ran it by him that I was going to propose this, and he seemed open to it. So this was I don't know.
I will say, speaking for myself, I am very open to it and very excited about it. In fact, so no reason to soft pedal it. I'm in.
So and I'm happy to just sort of arrange with the academics to sort of start, because I don't think this is something where it needs to be done in the sort of in the formal advisory council meeting, because that would this is hours and hours of discussion. But if you're I would just start talking about it, see what we come up with, if that's
okay,
good.
I like the idea, but just a word of caution. The executive director does not report. The executive director reports directly to the Board of Regents.
Right,
the advisory council is an advisory council,
but
the policies would have everything has to be approved ultimately by the Board of Regents.
Right, but my expectation is that this is advice, and that we would be providing expert advice on how these should go, and I think it would be more helpful than again, this is
The other person that I think would be really important to have involved in this would be the academic affairs officer for the Regents. Her name is Rachel Boone, and she has been very involved. She works directly with the provost, and she, as I said, she was involved in all the discussions and has had ongoing, continuing discussions with the provost. So I would want her to be part of that discussion. Because ultimately, we just talked about, everything has to be approved by the Board of Regents. And she's going to have to give a recommendation.
Wait, did you say she works for the provost or with the?
She works with the provost.
Right, 'cause
She
it's
is
not-
actually
She's a
on the-
regent. Like, this is all confusing, but she is
I
a
know, yeah.
employee of the regents, not an employee of the university.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe we should, I guess this is getting a bit into the weeds. Maybe we should discuss about whether we need to talk to
Yeah.
her. I don't know what.
I think if we could have a follow-up conversation with
Sure.
Richard, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm finishing
And-
my
oh.
list. Oh, sorry.
And I
Richard?
did,
Yes.
I'm not,
I just wanted to back up a little bit, Chris, and where it says C, vision of the Board of Regents for the center. So you gave us a lot of good information there, mostly things that are clicked off of a list, right? And things that as we're moving forward. Has the Board of Regents given a vision statement, or how have they approved this center or not? What are the discussions around that the Board of Regents have? If you could collectively let us know what that is. I think since they are the final approver of all this, we probably should see where their mindset is right now and how they discuss about it. That's number one. Number two, I think you know where I come from. You and I have talked about this before. It's what is best for the student. And if we can have civil discourse where we have a discussion about conservative principles, ideologies, we have discussion about liberal principles, ideologies, what is happening in the center. And as we're looking for someone to lead the Center for Intellectual Freedom, that we find someone who fits that bill and who understands the vision that the Board of Regents has, if they have given that, and also the vision that the center has, not necessarily the advisory board. Again, like Richard says, we're giving advice, we're giving recommendations, but the board is the ultimate hirer. They're the ultimate, voter on anything that we have placed before them. So just give us some idea about the vision that you think the board has, or if they've even discussed that at all.
Yeah, okay, so the discussions that have occurred with the Board of Regents have been individual one-on-one discussions with regents as well as through the leadership group. And there are calls that are scheduled with the leadership group on a regular basis. And the Center for Intellectual Freedom has been a topic of discussion at a number of those calls. So I would say that the regents are very united. If you look at the vision and the focus of the center, all you have to do is to go back and look at the legislation. It's clearly laid out in the legislation as to what the role of the center will be. So that would be how I would look at the vision. You've got the two bills, the bill that was passed establishing the center, and you now have the standings bill that was just passed this legislative session. So those are the guiding principles and what we go back to on a regular basis as to decisions that are being made.
Chris, this is Jim Lindenmeyer.
Yes.
You mentioned you'd had some conversations with Representative Collins about possible tweaks to the bill. Has there been any conversation legislatively about additional funding for this venture from the legislature?
No, there has not at this point. Jim and we believe that the fact that the courses have to go through the center, there is a formula as to how the tuition will follow. So that will be a significant revenue generator for the center. However, there have to be significant discussions with the university on that. And that was why I talked about how important it is to have a solid partnership with the university. The goal is to have it be self-supporting and not be looking to appropriations from the legislature. And, as leadership changes within the legislature, you can't assume that you're always going to get appropriations. But also, I would point out, Jim, that the legislation specifically spells out that potentially the universities would support the center, so that there would be funds that would come from the university.
Chris, I don't know if you can see that Regent Kramer and Dorian Abbott both have their hands up.
Yes, please do. Okay, Regent Kramer, do you want to go first? I didn't realize he was going to be on.
Well, I think you got the wrong.
Oh, it's
Oh,
Reynolds
no,
Kramer.
sorry. Oh,
It's
different
Reynolds.
Kramer.
I'm a
My
higher-
mistake. The video
I'm a
was
higher
off.
status. I'm a higher status than the Regent Kramer. I'm Reynolds Kramer. So, yeah. So, give me my 2 seconds here. First off, Colin, I think your job is to help regulate this meeting. So when hands go up, people get called, all that stuff. Just a little admin there. So secondarily, Richard, what I heard you talking about was trying to be ahead of things and proactive with the center and getting things accomplished so that we're not behind. And I guess that's probably been a little of my frustration the last few months. It seems like we're really behind the 8 ball when it comes to just a lot of things. And so it's not my job to be in charge of that, but from what I do every day and organizationally, that's a frustration. So we need to get ahead of things and be ready to go for if it's the next session for students, et cetera. That's just a comment. Secondarily, Liz, I love your comment about student first and being able to have an even playing field when it comes to just discussions. I think that's what I learned when I gave my presentation, that the students were talking about how things were just very one-sided in some of the classes, and they weren't able to maybe voice their opinions and felt comfortable that way. And I think, to me, isn't that what this is about, is giving a level playing field to talk about everything and equally and be respectful. So another comment. And then lastly, Christine, you had mentioned that it's important to have a good relationship with the University of Iowa. I think that's important too. And in fact, after we were together in December, I reached out to Professor Craig Just, and I had never met him. He seemed like just a great person, super intelligent. Obviously, he's a faculty senate president, or was, or is still. But I emailed him on the 15th of December. He responded, and then I emailed back on the 23rd of December saying, hey, when can we get together? Want to meet, want to talk to you, want to just learn a little bit about your insights coming from the university to how the center can work together, so that if I'm giving advice, I understand it. But I've heard nothing. So I think that's a little bit of a struggle if there are members that are important members at the university that maybe aren't reaching out when they've been given the opportunity. And I'm not sure why, but that's just my 2 cents. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Reynolds. I appreciate that insight. I'll follow up with you.
Just a quick interjection. Mark Marline wanted to raise his hand, but he can't. He has his hand raised, but not through the app.
But Dorian was also been up for a while, so.
I'm a professor at the University of Chicago. I teach geophysics. I do a lot of physical science core teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So this spring I had 500 students, and that's not exactly in the wheelhouse in terms of the subject matter, but I can help on that curriculum advisory committee in terms of things like running big classes, and particularly the issues that are coming up now in those big classes with AI and cheating. So I'd be happy to help if anyone wants my.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Are there any other hands up, Colin?
Oh, well, Mark was up, I think, next.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah, Mark.
Yes, I see the center not as an isolated unit in relation to certain ideals of civic discussion, but within the context of the full University of Iowa, and that part of that involves the recognition that across the University of Iowa there is not intellectual freedom, there is not intellectual diversity, and that this is one of the reasons why this center has had to be created, and that we should keep in mind what is going on elsewhere in the university on that score.
Thank you, Mark.
I guess I'm up next with my hand. I didn't see anyone
Yes,
else.
you are. Thank you.
I did want to just follow up on, sorry, not Regent Kramer's comment. I do think that it's important for people who are sort of outside the university ecosystem. I think it may come as a shock, or you might be surprised the extent to which there are people who are just going to be inveterately hostile to anything we are doing. And from my observation, from what the president of the faculty senate was saying at the advisory council meeting, I think it's safe to say that these are not necessarily people who want to see us succeed in any reasonable metric. So I think that might partly explain why you didn't get the follow up. The other thing I did want to mention is I think we need to think a little bit about whether it's actually a good idea to suspend all class. We've got 2 years before the mandated classes come in. I kind of think it might be going in the wrong direction to back off of any teaching. There were some issues with getting the class because the payments couldn't be approved, and then the classes were these sort of what at Texas would be called a super elective that didn't count for anything. There are probably intermediate states where where the center could be offering classes that, while not mandated, do fulfill some requirement. And I think maybe it would be worth investigating that, especially if we're trying to scale up. I really would hate to see us try to scale up to have enough faculty to teach all of these required classes, like the fall when they're starting. I don't know. I mean, that makes me, the idea of hiring that many people at once just is causing me enormous anxiety already. And so if we could sort of maybe think about having other classes where they will count for something, where we can go ahead and start having people come in and get their feet wet, that might be something to consider. I'm nervous about going from like nothing to teaching every student at Iowa.
And Richard, we did have that discussion with the provost. So that's why it's really important that Rachel Boone, who is the academic officer with the Regent's office and is working with the provost, so that potentially there could be a transition plan, or there are other courses that would already meet the requirements. So all of this is going on right now.
I think it might be helpful if we were sort of, to bring in some of the more of the advisory board on those discussions might be useful.
That's the intent of the meeting today.
Okay.
To find out where everybody's at, and we'll be proactive and move forward. So,
okay.
Anybody else, Colin, to come up with their hand up before we go on to Richard?
There is no one else with their hand up at this time.
Okay, Richard, it's all yours.
All right. Well, I'll try to be brief. So we have basically, I'm the chair of the committee with respect to matters pertaining to the search. We had tried to get going with a search firm much earlier. For whatever reason, the Regent's office, we identified a search firm, and for whatever reason, the Regent's office couldn't reach an agreement with them. We tried several, other avenues to find a search firm, and we ended up having people who expressed interest and then withdrew interest. There's a lot going on there that we probably don't have time to get into. So the upshot is then this bill passed, so we have to sort of expedite. The upshot is we're just going to, the current plan is to just run the search through the advisory council with me as the chair of the scholar committee, in case anyone's forgotten how that structure is. So we're just going to, me and Tom Galanis, who's volunteered to help out on some of the search things, worked on a job posting. We didn't send it around. I don't know if we can send it around, but I think it is a job posting. And so we're planning to proceed. I've sent, the Regent's office has it now, I guess.
Yeah, let me just interject there, Richard. The Regent office, I did send it to legal. And I talked about a couple of things this morning with you, but there's just a couple of sentences that they want incorporated, about restrictions on DEI and that, and I'll forward that to you, but it's nothing significant to impact the job description.
Okay, and so what we're planning to do is get that out on whatever time frame the Regent's office can get it turned around, posted to the official job site, and then I believe the plan is to post the ad to some of the like core discipline. They just have these job boards where every job goes, and then we'll collect CVs and letters of interest directly to the advisory council, I guess. And I've run faculty searches before, and my sense is the first cut of this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of nonsense that's obviously, people find jobs and apply randomly. So there'll be sort of a first cull of, is this a serious applicant? Then my plan is to just take these and distribute for at least one or two, probably ideally at least two opinions on any serious candidate from the advisory council member who's sort of, my hope would be one person who's very close to the area and one person who's maybe a little farther from the area, get a couple of eyes on everything, and then maybe from there convene a meeting to sort of discuss these, and then we would come up with a list that would come to, I'm not exactly sure, but I think we would take it to the entire advisory council as a proposed list of finalists, which would then go, and we're on a pretty tight schedule, so we're asking for applicants by July 30th, and the regents are hoping to get the final decision by September 16th, the September 16th and 17th meeting. So I may be calling on particularly the academics for some help with this, because I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get 4 applications or 40 or 400, but we'll try to minimize the amount of time it drains, and I'll try to sort of filter out obvious nonsense.
Can I just add a couple comments, Richard?
Sure.
You and I talked about this morning. We feel very strongly from the region perspective that it needs to have a separate email where all of the applicants can just submit their information, and it will be an email that a limited number of people will have access to. And that way we can just be assured that Richard and Tom and have all of the information, and then we can add people to that at the time. And if, for example, the process moves forward quicker than September 16th and 17th, which I think everybody would be happy with if that was the case, we could call a special regent meeting. Okay. And the intent is that we would have those final applicants interview with the Board of Regents, and then the Board of Regents will make the final decision on who the director will be.
Okay. And I guess Liz, I have one
you.
more thing to add, but
I'm just concerned. I want to make sure that Christine is also looking at the applicants, that there are at least 3 people who are looking at it, 3 sets of eyes on there, and especially since she's the chair of the advisory board, I feel comfortable with that. Because if there's any screening going on, I think the 3 of you probably need to be in concert with that about, what's going to be presented to the full advisory board or the exec committee. Again, if you could send out the job description to the full board, that'd be great. I'd like to see what we're asking for, what kind of credentials, the vision that they're being, that they're given about the center, and what that looks like.
I don't want to speak for Regent Hensley, but I do think there is some desire to sort of keep the regent, like the regents have of the ultimate say, and so I think it's a little complicated how exactly to keep those worlds separate. I know in some cases you're not, like UT has these strange rules about nobody gets to vote on the same thing twice or something. So I don't know to what extent Regent Hensley even wants to be in the sort of filtering step versus the final step.
I would like to I just want to make sure that, not that I suspect anything would happen, but I obviously respect the faculty's review they're going to have a much better information, but I'd just like to know about it to make sure everything is going forward. And the Regent's office, even though the Regent's office, they're going to have to be helpful to us in some ways. I mean, you know, as we get down to narrowing it down to the finalists and, you know, making all the arrangements and everything. I'm not sure that you want to do that, Richard, or Tom wants to do that. But we can lean on the Regent office to help us with that. And I can be that liaison.
You know, anything that looks plausible is going to at least have two pairs of eyes on it. There are going to be people who apply who don't have PhDs and don't work in an academic industry, and those are just not going to circulate. There's just always, because these things get posted broadly, there's going to be some first cut of like, this is not even somebody who we would waste anyone's time on. That's what I would cut with no eyes on it.
Well, and the other thing too is, you know, the Regents are going to be the ones making the final decision on who's hired. So the Regents that are on the advisory council will potentially have a say in that as well.
Just feel more comfortable as an advisory board member if Chris was emailed on this as well. Adding her, I think, I don't know how the rest of the advisory board feels about this, but I just think that it would be a good balance.
Well, I mean, the bylaws are structured in a way so that the search is chaired by the person selected by the scholars on the advisory board. So this is not something random that we've come up with. This is how the bylaws anticipate. And that is, I think, in order, as Regent Hensley was alluding to this, we do want to have the separation. This is an academic search. To the extent that this can just be an academic search where, you know, because this, you know, I don't want to be in a position of going and, you know, running somebody's academic qualifications by either a legislator or even a regent. You know, and there are issues with accreditation associated with who does what thing. And I think the separation has some value, especially since there is the final say is at the regent. So I'd like to stay as close to the spirit of the law and the bylaws as we can.
Well, I would do, Richard, excuse me, just to add to that, I think, one, there's no question the role that the academic committee plays. And obviously you're going to make a decision on that. I think it's extremely important though, because of the high profile of the center, that it is very open and transparent. Doesn't mean, you know, I would have a vote at that particular time, but I think having as many people on the advisory committee involved is going to be for the betterment of the process, because it will be open and transparent. Understanding again that the faculty scholar committee, you're the chair of that, and you're the one that will be making the recommendations.
And we are an advisory board. We're not a search committee per se.
Well, the law actually does. This is the one spot where the law actually gives governance power to the advisory board, is the proposal of the list to the regents. So there is a little bit of a subtlety there where everything else is advisory, but this is actually a thing. I mean, it's complicated how this thing is set up. But,
well,
yeah.
Then there should be no problem with widening the search committee / advisory board.
There is also,
rather than just seeing two sets of eyes, excuse me, that there would be two sets of eyes, and we should probably have three or more in doing this and just weeding things out. I think it just adds a different perspective onto it. And
well, but to me, it's very important that this be at the initial level a decision made by people who are who are scholars, and that's, that is anticipated.
And I don't see that being an issue, Richard.
But I can add a third scholar. Like I can, if it would be, I mean, my concern with having more eyeballs on it is just the amount of time it's going to drain from the small set of people who've agreed to help us without compensation. So
yeah, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think you're going to have a problem with that.
I don't either. Okay,
I have no idea how many applications we're going to get. That's going to probably determine a lot of it. If it's a small number, we
I
can
think you're
ask
going to
it.
get a lot.
And there are advisory board members who have sat on search committees before. This is not new for Mike Whalen, or this is not new for Greg Gansky. You know, so we have
This
experience
is Amy
in that
Clays
as well.
here. Sorry, I don't mean to interject, but I joined this meeting for the precise purpose of interjecting. We have run so many searches at the board office level and at the university level that have a variety of controls in place. We are here to help you with all of this. So I think it would behoove us all to sit down and talk about a search process, including confidentiality, structure, who is going to be on first with gathering the documents, processing them. I don't disagree necessarily with anything that's been said today. I just think we're getting a little chaotic. So it would be really great if we had a much smaller group that sat down and talked to the board office about how to run a search, because we actually know how to do it well, extraordinarily well. And we're here to help you.
So I would suggest as a follow-up to this, Richard, that we schedule a meeting with Amy and have that conversation just so that we have a clear understanding and don't take any missteps as we move forward.
That seems quite reasonable. And barring anything else on the search, and given the time, I think I'm gonna hand back over to Chris at this point. I think
Okay.
unless, Chris, was there anything
No.
that I missed that you think I
No,
needed to?
no, I think,
Okay.
I think, you know, in all honesty, everybody, I appreciate the discussion. This was not the intent as we first started this process. We thought we were going to have a firm, but we are now moving forward in this direction. I think this discussion was good. And Richard, I will follow up with you and Tom to get a meeting scheduled. And Amy was legal counsel for the Board of Regents office, and she's the one that also reviewed the job description and had just a few changes, nothing significant, Richard, there are just some legalese that had to be added at the bottom.
Legalese and specific Iowa requirements, Richard. I'm really looking forward to sitting down with you and discuss how searches function at this level in Iowa. So
that was one of the reasons I was hoping for a search firm, because
no, it didn't happen, but we can get it done.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, Richard. Get your team together, Regent Hensley. Let's get a small team together and let's figure this out in a separate meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Luciano, you're up next.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for attending this meeting. So in this, we are in the center business part of the update. The first one is about courses. I just want to comment that we organized 2 courses. It ended up being 14 lectures taught by very accomplished professors in the University of Iowa and from other people, including some of the members here of the advisory council. We have even, for instance, Mark Bauerland was one of them, Mike Whalen, and Reynolds Kramer as well.
Reynolds Kramer.
Greg Gansky, exactly. So I was very proud to organize these lectures. Initially, what I thought was to offer those lectures as a course together with the possibility of opening up to the public. But unfortunately, the university policies put some restriction on that. So we had to restrict to the students enrolled in the course. So it'll be 14 open lectures with a great attendance, but it has to be restricted to the students. However, one of the things, and this will be kind of a comment after the comment by Reynolds Kramer, what I asked from all of the lecturers was exactly to promote discussion and to promote free participation, the participation completely open to all the students. And this is one thing that I asked all lecturers to prepare. And I was not able to participate in all of the lectures because I was also teaching during this semester, but I actually attended a few of them. And at least the ones that unfortunately I missed the exactly Reynolds Kramer lecture because of a travel. But the ones that I actually attended were very engaged. There were a lot of discussions, and it was really nice. There is one thing that I want to show to you. There was discussion about the enrollment in the course, and I want to be completely open about this. So the two courses were the Political and Economic Institutions of the US. It had 11 students, and American Culture and Values had 8 students. And this was considered low. Actually, the numbers are low, but we have to remember two things, and I want to highlight those things. First, these courses count only for hours. These are what Richard called super elective, because they do not count for anything, do not count for certificates, minors, or majors. And once you understand the decision process for the students, you understand why this course have some difficulties. The time of the student is very is competed with a lot of different courses, and the students try to put priority in courses that will bring not only hours but also bring them closer to complete a major, a minor, or a certificate. And those courses do not have these characteristics. Most of the courses that are electives in the University of Iowa also count, at least the electives, they at least count as elective courses for a major. Our courses does not even have this characteristic because it does not count for any major. If you focus on elective courses, and the graph that you are seeing there in your screen is data from elective course in the College of Liberal Arts and Science for the last semester that we had data on, was the fall 2025. And if you see here the distribution of the courses, the median enrollment in these courses is only 10. It's a low number, but the interesting thing that we have to realize is that our numbers, 8 and 11, is just typical. So it's very close to the median of those courses. So these enrollments is typical enrollment for this kind of course. And I want to emphasize this because I'll not say the name of the journals, but some newspapers were considering this enrollment as dismal. And I think that this characterization does not correspond to the data, because these are just typical enrollment for this kind of courses. So this is the thing about courses. I want to go next about the market assessment. The market assessment was hired by the center and conducted by the Common Sense Institute with some help from our center as well. I hired some research assistants to help to collect and work with the enrollment data from the University of Iowa. So there were two parts of the report. One part was made of interviews with directors of multiple centers, civic centers around the country. I think 16 of them were contacted, and they were actually able to talk with some directors of 11 directors, if I'm not mistaken, and I participated in some of the discussions. And some of these centers also shared data with the Common Sense Institute, and these data were helpful to present and prepare the report. One of the things that were highlighted in the report is that there is a huge variance in terms of the demand, and there are many different factors that affect the demand. So it's very hard to predict, therefore, what will be our demand without controlling these factors that will affect the actual demand. But one of the conclusions that the CSI emphasizes that the centers do not start with the demand, they create it, and there are different pathways to do this. Some centers first hire the faculty, offer the courses, and offer also majors and minors. And the fact that you are offering the possibility of students to get some thing that goes in their CVs, and these are the things that the students are looking for. When you offer the course and offer minors, majors, then the students come to the centers. And another thing that they emphasize, or at least another path, is exactly when legislators put some requirements of general education. And this was something that was also highlighted by a few directors. Actually, I would say that most of the directors put this relationship between the courses serving the purpose of graduation for the students. This is crucial because this is also part of why students come to universities. And another aspect that, especially from the quantitative analysis, another aspect that we find out is that the core curriculum requirements and the credentials like majors, minors, and certificates play an important role in the University of Iowa. So these demand factors actually were emphasized by the directors in their interviews, and they were able to verify that this is the case looking at the data of the University of Iowa. So as I said, the CSI released this report on April 29th, and this was just 1 or 2 weeks before the end of the legislative session. So all the discussion by the representatives and senators in Iowa took place before this report was released. So the next item here in my presentation is about policies. The bylaws require specify that the director shall develop policies and procedures for the center subject to the approval of the advisory council and the board. Following this mandate by the bylaws, I prepared the first 3 policies of the center. They were prepared in January, shared with the executive committee in February, and they were approved in the last meeting of the executive committee on April 30th. So the 3 policies that were prepared was about the development, approval, and amendment of policies. The second one about institutional neutrality, essentially adopting the Chicago principles. And the third one is about content development and intellectual property. So the next
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yes.
So you wrote institutional neutrality and then you wrote Chicago principles, and the institutional neutrality is actually specified in the Calvin report at the University of Chicago, not in the Chicago principles.
Yeah, so for sure, Dorian, exactly. So there are 3 documents that collectively are called maybe loosely as Chicago principles, and there are I'm referring to the 3 documents.
So you're referring to Schills, Calvin, and the Chicago principles that came out years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. That's right.
And I agree with all of those. They're all great documents.
Yes, and so I think that exactly as was observed before, for Institute of Intellectual Freedom, it should be important to have this policy in place. And that's exactly what Policy 2 is all about. And Policy 3 is about content development and intellectual property, which is also something that the center should promote. Okay. So the next item in my report, and I try to be very brief because we have a little time. As Regent Hensley emphasized, we are focused on developing a speaker series. I think of 3 kinds of different public events. One is to have a prominent speaker during the semester, and we are in a process of selecting this, and also a series of speakers related to the 250th anniversary. And another thing that I want also to include that is, and I don't know if we'll be successful, but I try to invite candidates for the November election, of course, Iowa candidates, to speak in the university. And of course, putting the candidates of both parties and to invite them to the campus, because this is a discussion of civics, and I think that is helpful for the University of Iowa community. We had other plans.
Harold has his hand raised.
We were, I'm sorry? So I'll just stop, and then we have all the plans. We had all the plans for the fall, but as Regent Hensley said, we were asked to put everything on hold to wait for the permanent director. Harold?
Yeah, so do I understand this right, that with the new legislation, the issues or the concerns raised in the market assessment report are now pretty much mute because we're going to see large classes that the center has to organize?
I don't know if I understood your question. So of course, the bill requirement is 2 courses, one American history and American government, and it has to be offered by the Center for Intellectual Freedom to all students entering in the University of Iowa beginning to 2028, so in 2 years.
But
so
yes, that means there's not going to be issues of enrollment. That was his question, is that enrollment is no longer.
Yes, exactly.
Ah,
right.
okay,
I mean, there's
so
going to
of
be
course
huge
then-
enrollment and huge demand for
We have the
the
opposite.
services
exactly.
of the center, right? By law, right? Is that
Exactly.
right?
Correct. Yep.
Yes, exactly. So yes, we're going to have the effect of this bill is that we will need to educate a lot of students, all the students coming to the University of Iowa. Any other comment, questions?
Thank you, Luciano, for all that information. I appreciate it.
I think
Anything?
Liz wants to say something.
I
does?
just did, Luciano, your policy about intellectual property. So the University of Iowa they have policies. Is there any reason why you wouldn't use the standard University of Iowa policy to use that for the Center for Intellectual Freedom?
Yeah, so as I put here in the bylaws say that we shall develop policies and procedures. Of course, one option is to refer to the policy of the university. However, in this particular case, the policy of the university are problematic in my view, because they open the door for the control of copyright produced by the center. So if I don't know if you want me to go into the details of this, but all the 3 policies I found that were extremely important. I mean, the first one is just about the general things, but the policy 2 and policy 3 are different from the policy of the university, and I thought that it was important to be written. If you want, I can go in more detail on this.
I was just wondering where it would apply. Say if you were going to write a book, you're going to sell the book. If that applies to that, and since we're taking in taxpayer money to do that, and people would be paid, I would assume, with taxpayer money, is that maybe the reason why, or isn't that covered by something that the university's policy indicates?
Okay, so at your request, I have to explain more detail this, okay? So this is exactly the issue that was raised. In the inaugural event, as you know, I announced in that inaugural event the organization of a book that will be organized by the director with the articles presented or prepared by the scholars that came to that inaugural event. A few weeks after that event, I received a communication that I have to be aware of the university policy on copyrights. And the legal department of the university prepared a series of links to the policies of the university regarding to the copyrights. I went to this policy and I read carefully, and there is one particular item there that said that things, and this is where the things get a little bit not completely clear. As you know, as things are written, it can be understood one way or the other. But one of the items there in the policy says that if you prepare any material that goes, or it is prepared because you are under administrative position, then this material, the copyright of this material belongs to the university. And one reasonable understanding is that if I prepared this book, you could claim that I'm preparing this book because I'm the director of or interim director of the Center for Intellectual Freedom, and therefore the copyright belongs to the university. And I understood that this was exactly the intention because it was commented about the book that I announced that I would be preparing. So because of that, I wrote these policies, and actually to get to this policy of the third policy is actually to protect and to say people that worked in the preparation of a book like this, the copyright will not belong to the university, the copyright would belong to the authors, exactly to protect the ability of the people working on the book to publish it, right? And this is exactly one of the main reasons why I wrote the policy 3. And I was, until this moment, I never came back to the authors that submitted the articles for that book, because I was waiting for this policy to be approved to be completely sure that the copyright of this book would not be claimed by the university, and therefore they could, for instance, do things to avoid the publication of the book. And so I announced the book in the inaugural event in December. Actually, I think that's that Saturday, December 6th. And I was not able to organize the book at that time until now, because I don't have the protection that the book would, the copyright of the book would belong to the authors and actually to the editor. I would be the editor of the book, right? So right now this project is on hold because we don't have this protection.
Let me just add to that, Luciano, because you know that you and I have had a number of conversations as in regards to this, and in all due respect, we have gotten back to Luciano indicating that they do have, they can go forward with the book and be protected. Luciano has specifically requested that we, the executive director, Luciano said that the executive director of the Board of Regents had to sign a policy. Our legal counsel has indicated, and we've gotten back to Luciano, that he does not have to abide by the university policy. So we can continue to have these discussions with all due respect here. There is a feeling that he still needs some protection, which our legal counsel tells us that is not the case. So let's stop it at that, Luciano. We don't need to have further discussion at this point. I appreciate all the information you provided here, but you and I and the Regent Council will continue to have discussions on that if you want to pursue going forward with the book.
Okay, I'll not tell anything else, although I have something to do.
Okay.
I think Sergio had his hand up for a bit.
Yes,
he
please.
might be off the chart. Yeah.
Sergio, we're not hearing you.
We cannot hear you.
He's not muted, but his microphone doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, well, I guess.
Okay. Anybody else? Sergio, do you want to put something in the chat box?
Yeah, if you write, I can read.
while he's doing that, is there anything else that we need to discuss? I can assure you that there will probably be more communications and scheduled meetings, but we'll continue to send out doodle polls just to determine what date works for everybody. Richard, did you have anything else?
No, I think I covered from my end.
Can I make a comment on scheduling meetings? It'd be
Yes,
helpful if we could schedule them out a little further in advance.
I would agree with that. We were just in a panic trying to get this group pulled together after the bill signing. So my apologies. I was probably behind that because I just knew how important it was we got things moving. So understand. And you know what we should do? As Richard and I meet with legal counsel and figure out this recruiting process, we'll look at the schedule and try to get dates out in the month of July and August for you.
What about now? Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, so my question was that given the fact that the university is not very supportive of your efforts, Luciano, from what I understand, how much has that affected what you have been able to achieve until now? And what are the chances for a change in the future?
Oh, Sergio, that's a very difficult question too. So let's say that I don't have time to answer to your question. Can I go with that?
Yeah, sure.
I think he wants to
that,
follow up with you directly.
okay, I will follow it up with you.
Thank you. Anything else? Again, I want to thank everybody for your participation. Exciting times for the center, lots to look forward to. And I don't know all the faculty well. I've had the opportunity to work with some of you more so than others, but please don't ever hesitate to give me a call or send me an email, and I'll be happy to follow up with you. But again, appreciate your time and support. Exciting times for us, and we'll get dates out in advance, much further than what we did today. But thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting
you.
adjourned.
Thank you.